Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Let's start by going back, then we'll look forward. General overview of the three-day draft. How did the Saints do?
Oh, they did great. Look, the biggest need was met, which was the defensive line. They went into the draft, whether they would say it or not. They didn't have a starting defensive tackle on the roster. They now add Brian Brzee from Clemson, who I know a lot of people are concerned with injuries with him. But that last injury has been away for quite some time. They bring in a good character guy for the locker room, and you just look at some of his intangibles. He might be someone that starts right away. Then you bring in your edge rusher, right, in Isaiah Foskey. You got him at 40. You also got Brzee at 29, and then you add in a running back, Kendre Miller at 71, which you didn't have to move up for the three of those. And then they hit a home run on the final day. They moved up 3 times. They get a guard from Old Dominion, Nick Saldivari, who, just from the tape that we've seen, he could be coming for some starting jobs. And, of course, we saw the Saints did not pick up Cesar Ruiz's fifth-year option. Right. That could have something to do with it. They get a quarterback. We don't know much about the safety yet. And, of course, they get a steal with A.T. Perry, wide receiver from Wake Forest, who fell pretty far in the draft.
You know, so I echo everything that you just said. I love what they did. The most obvious hole that remains, I think, would be tight end, especially with trading Adam Troutman away. I saw y'all talked about this on the pod, but just give me a sense of what you think, you being around the organization, what they're going to do there, Brooke, because, I mean, they can't just go into the season with Juwan Johnson and Taysom Hill. I mean, they got to add bodies there. What do they do?
I think they're actually going to go and try to find a veteran in free agency. I don't think they're going to try and expect a young tight end to start right away. They do have tight end one, which is a good thing. Juwan Johnson has made that transition. And just think back a few years ago, undrafted free agent who had a much smaller frame. He has completely changed his body to move from wide receiver to tight end. He's proven that he deserves that starting tight end one role. I don't think Taysom Hill is going to line up at all at tight end. We'll see how his kind of dynamic role shifts as more of a, in the run game a little bit, but I don't think he's going to be a tight end. So, yes, you're absolutely right. They need to bring in another tight end with Adam Troutman on his way to Denver, and I think they do it by going and getting one of those veteran tight ends that are on the market right now.
Hey, go back to Juwan Johnson for a second. So it's interesting. You mentioned him changing his body. Obviously he was a receiver at Penn State, then transferred to Oregon, and has sort of morphed into a tight end with the Saints. Do you think the Saints change their approach at tight end? I mean, we know what Sean Payton liked to do, right? Where we'd always have two tight ends, sort of like the Who man, right? Michael Ho'omanawanui or Dan Arnold, those type guys, and then you had the pass catcher as well. Is that what we'd expect from the Saints, to continue with those sort of like two tight end looks?
Yeah, I think so. And the Saints have never been shy on what they like their tight ends to do, which is kind of surprising. That was started by Sean Payton, of having your tight ends be incredibly involved in the run game. And Adam Troutman is now heading to Denver to get a little bit more of that continuing to going with Sean Payton. But no, I think the Saints they believe in the wide receivers they have, and they believe in Alvin Kamara and now the backup running back. So I don't think it's going to be tight end heavy. I think that they can have success with Juwan Johnson and Taysom Hill if they both stay healthy. So, I'm curious to see who they bring in that can bring in that other role. Like, you get a different kind of tight end, right? Like, do you go traditional Juwan Johnson, big frame, good blocker? Or do you maybe get more of a dynamic tight end in free agency? We'll see what happens.
Brooke Kirchhofer is with us. She's on Twitter at Brooke Chesney. I'll give her a follow. Of course, WWL, and also joining the guys over at NewOrleans.football. Flip it over to the defensive side. I was really interested in what they did with some of the undrafted free agents. Where do you think, as we head toward minicamp, and then ultimately OTAs, where is the opportunity for some of those undrafted free agents on the defensive side?
So you mentioned needs. Tight end is on the offense. Linebacker is on the defense. They did not replace Caden Ellis, in the draft. Of course, he's now headed over to the Dirty Birds to play for the Falcons. They didn't replace him in the draft. They did add a young, shorter linebacker in Nick Anderson. He is 5'9". That is believed to be why he fell out of the draft. The Saints have liked him during the last few months, though. They've been in a lot of conversations with him. New Orleans has kind of become home for this Tulane linebacker. And remember, I mean, you know him well, Matt. 5'9" linebacker has thrived in the Saints defense before. Sam Mills, that is somebody he wants to emulate. I talked to Nick actually about that yesterday, and he is somebody he has studied a ton of his film. And he wants to come in and he wants to prove that he can be Sam Mills-esque. Now, there's only one Sam Mills, but Nick Anderson believes he can come in and make the team. And his strength and conditioning coach, Kurt Hester, who's been training athletes for the NFL and getting them ready for the NFL Combine. He's been doing this for 30, 40 years. He told me that Nick Anderson is going to make it hard for the Saints to cut him because he's going to do everything right on the locker room, on the field, and on special teams. He told me the other day he's played 4 or 5 different positions on special teams for all 4 years at Tulane, and I think that ultimately will get him a spot on the 53.
Hey, I want to ask a follow-up on Nick, because I honestly just never got to see him play at Tulane. So many Saturdays we're just like so heavily focused on LSU.
Right.
So give me like a thumbnail on Nick Anderson. Like what type of player, if you had to describe him? I mean, the Sam Mills comp because of the size, obviously, but like, is he a thumper? Is he a turn and run guy? Is he athletic edge rush? Like, what kind of player is he?
He plays bigger than his size. He plays bigger than 5'9". And what's really grabbed the Saints' attention about his play is tackling in space and even tackling some big guys in space. Remember, they had some success against Oklahoma, Ole Miss, and especially Kansas City. He's going to be somebody who can provide that extra push at linebacker for the Saints. If anybody gets out in open space, you can expect Nick Anderson to get over there and tackle them and not have to wait for your safeties to get to that. So I think that's maybe a part of his game that maybe the Saints like.
I want to ask about quarterback. It's just what I can have a conversation about the draft when the Saints take a quarterback and not talk about it. Did you think, or have you heard ear to ground, if the Saints, we know they took Jay Cainer in round 4, were they considering a quarterback at any other spot in the draft that you're aware of?
Conversations, look, for any NFL team, I think it's fair to say all 32 teams were looking at a potential backup for years to come. Any NFL team is going to approach the draft in that way. The Saints were approaching the draft just like the other 32 teams when it came to looking for a backup quarterback, but they felt comfortable with Jay Cainer. Remember, they went up to get Jay Cainer from Fresno State. Yeah. He has a history with the Saints, with Drew Brees, with Derek Carr, and of course he worked with Ronald Curry at the Senior Bowl. So for them, he seemed like the right guy to sit back and learn, figure out this offense, and who knows, maybe in a few years he is competing for that job.
What do you think the plan? I mean, is that a draft and stash type deal where he's just stashed on the practice squad for a year? Or is this, I mean, is that a player that you would fear if you try to stash him on the practice squad could get signed? I'm just trying to think of how they've handled situations with, quarterbacks they've drafted in the past. It was an Ian Book or, a Garrett Grayson.
Right, well, you hope he doesn't get thrown into the Ian Book situation. I think all Saints fans have nightmares of that Dolphins game. Good Lord. And you had no offensive line throwing in a rookie quarterback. I don't think that's going to be the case with Jay Cainer. I think they're going to develop him, and I don't think he's going to see the field this year. Maybe even just who knows how much in the preseason, just because it seemed like even from talking with Jay Cainer, the Saints want to really work on him and develop him as a young quarterback. They don't want to rush anything with this guy because they have full belief in Derek Carr, and they arguably have the best backup quarterback in the NFL with Jameis Winston. So there's really no need to force the issue with Jay Cainer. No reason to speed up his development process.
Hey, Brooke, before you go, I didn't prep you on this. I don't know if you know it off the top, but schedule moving ahead. I know the rookie minicamp dates are out there, but what's ahead for the Saints in the coming weeks and months?
Oh, you just stumped me. So I do know that rookie minicamp is next week. We are going to hear from, rookie minicamp is next week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Okay.
Saturday, we will hear from Dennis Allen, and then, of course, OTAs will follow that. And look, a lot of these guys that are entering year 2 in New Orleans weren't here for OTAs last year. We actually just talked with Tyrann Mathieu on the show that is dropping tonight, and he said he reminded us really that he wasn't here this time last year, and just how much further the defense is along this offseason specifically. He gets into that and talks about that on our show. So I think it's going to be a really fun offseason covering these guys, and we're looking forward to bringing you guys all the coverage.
So, yeah, I saw the tweet, by the way. There's the photo. I think Nick posted the photo of Nick, Brooke, and Tyron in studio there recording the New Orleans Football podcast. So that drops tonight. Can you give us any other tidbits on or teasers on what Tyron had to say?
So you might have saw Tyron Matthew tweet about basketball recently, right?
Yeah.
Trying to get some of the guys in some pickup games. There's a player on the Saints roster that you would not expect to hear was a big part of that and was actually dominating. He's one of the older heads.
Okay.
And it's not Cam Jordan because he's insane.
Okay.
So be on the lookout for that. And, Matt, you might know this. Him and Joe Woods go back because when the Honey Badger was coming out of LSU, he was one of Joe Woods' first interviews when he was in the NFL.
Very interesting.
So
Okay.
he gets into that as well. And let me apologize to everybody over there in Baton Rouge with Matt Moscona's show. I promise you Dome Patrol posters last time we talked. I had it in hand. Let me just tell you this. I had it in hand. The guys I work with can attest to this. I'm walking out with these posters, and torrential rainpour just demolishes them. So I owe you guys some Dome Patrol posters.
I have good news. Somebody came through for me. I forgot who it was. Do you know who came through? Do you remember the news? Somebody came through.
I don't remember who it was.
It was wrinkled, and it's still in my office under books flattening out, but I did manage to score a Dome Patrol poster. So I'd completely forgotten that you owed me.
Cool gear this year.
Well, you just I would have totally forgotten, Brooke. So you would have been good until you just outed yourself. But no worries.
I just outed myself. It is what it is.
All's well that ends well. Brooke on Twitter at Brooke Chesney, Brooke Kirchhofer, WWL, and the New Orleans Football podcast. Check it out. We appreciate it. Thanks, Brooke.
Thanks, Matt.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.